Hydro-Quebec's facilities can help reduce the impact of spring flooding. Spring flooding is a natural phenomenon that occurs when rain and melting snow increase the flow in rivers and streams. If severe and sudden, this increase can cause waterways to overflow, resulting in flooding. To understand what causes spring flooding, we should first look at the concept of a watershed. When it rains or snow melts, the water that doesn't seep into the ground flows downhill and into a stream or river that in turn flows into a larger waterway. The area that is drained by a river is called a watershed or drainage basin. Some rivers have immense watersheds. The Ottawa River watershed, for example, covers over 146,000 square kilometers. It can take a drop of water 3 weeks to cross it. In spring, the snow that has accumulated over the winter can melt quite quickly, causing a lot of water to flow into waterways. If we add rainfall to the mix, all that water can result in very high water levels and flooding. With all of its dams, generating stations, and spillways, it might be tempting to believe that Hydro-Québec can hold back the water and reduce high water levels. This is partly true, but only in watersheds where Hydro-Québec operates reservoirs. These reservoirs are like artificial lakes. They vary in size based on the terrain. A reservoir allows generating stations to produce electricity all year long, which means we can regulate the river's flow downstream of the facility. Reservoirs can also limit the impact of spring flooding by storing large quantities of water. Here's how. During winter, when Quebecers use a lot of electricity to heat their homes, the water in the reservoirs supplies our hydropower generating stations, so the water levels in the reservoirs drop. In spring, we make sure that the reservoirs in the southern part of Quebec are at their lowest level so that they can store as much water as possible during the spring thaw. Reservoirs contribute to reducing the severity of spring flooding and the damage it can cause. If we didn't have reservoirs, water levels during spring flooding would be even higher. But a reservoir can only collect water from the watershed located upstream. In other words, it can't collect the water that results from rainfall and melting snow downstream. Despite these constraints, in some watersheds, like those of the Ottawa or St. Maurice rivers, our reservoirs collect up to 40% of the water on the territory. That's the situation for generating stations with reservoirs. In areas where the land is rather flat and reservoirs can't be built, Hydro-Québec generates electricity using run-of-river generating stations. These stations use the natural flow of the river to drive their turbines. If the flow is too great during the spring thaw, we open the spillway gates, often built beside the generating station, to let the excess water through. If we tried to stop the water, it would quickly flow over and around the generating facilities, causing severe damage without lessening the impact downstream. Run-of-river generating stations can still be used to reduce spring flooding, but to a lesser extent. Here's how. In the spring, Hydro-Québec lowers the optimal operating level of its run-of-river generating stations. Depending on the terrain, this can result in water levels being lowered by up to 2 meters. When spring flooding starts suddenly, this helps to reduce the natural backup of water that occurs dozens of kilometers upstream of the generating station. It allows us to reestablish the natural river conditions to a certain extent, almost as if the generating station didn't exist. Hydro-Québec has a great deal of expertise dealing with spring flooding. Throughout the year, and particularly in spring, we put it to work to anticipate and reduce the effects of spring flooding. Our network of hydrometeorological stations covers every region in Quebec and allows us to collect the data that plays a role in spring flooding, such as river water levels and flows, rainfall, and snowpack. We take samples of snow cover to determine the water content. The data is analyzed and fed into forecasting models, which are used to predict the water inflows that will result from the melting snow. We can then design strategies to reduce the impact of flooding on riverside communities. Our efforts are combined with those of other organizations that operate reservoirs and dams. Year after year at Hydro-Québec, we work closely with other stakeholders concerned, and we do everything we can to reduce the impact of spring flooding. It's an important part of our mission.